Hi everyone and welcome to Classic Gamer 74. I'm your host Anthony and I'm your host Red the Fox, and today we're going to be discussing early football video games. Electronic Quarterback, the handheld game by Coleco, was released in 1978, and this was a sure sign that football was making its way into the video game world. You're right, Red. In that same year, Atari released their own football game called simply Football, or has gone on to be known as Atari Football, programmed by Bob Whitehead. Now, for its time, the game was pretty primitive, but you can tell who the players are and exactly what you're playing, so we had a lot of fun playing it. Now, the next game that came out in 1982 was M Network Super Challenge Football. This was programmed by Ken Smith. Now, one thing I liked about this game here was you got to tell each of the players the play. So you walk down the line as the quarterback telling the offensive line either block or go out for a pass. And the same thing with the defensive line. You told them to block the pass or to blitz the quarterback. The only problem I had with this game, and the only problem, was that it was two players only. Well, yeah, back in those days, though, the Atari was kind of encouraged to be a two-player, family get-together game. But having AI, I agree totally, would have been a great idea. That same year, Atari Corporation came out with probably one of the best game series of all, that being the Real Sports series. And of course, in that Real Sports series was Real Sports Football, programmed by Robert Zibel. One thing I liked a lot about Real Sports Football was it took a lot of the aspects of the original Atari Football and with Super Challenge Football and kind of rolled them into one. Now, in this one, of course, you call plays with the joystick and the button. You could also elect to pass, punt, just like a regular game. But what was cool about this one is you could have one player. You could play against a computer or with a buddy. And it had difficulty switches, so you could make the game as easy or as difficult as you wanted. So I really enjoyed this game a lot. But you had to remember one thing. What was that? If you set the game too easy, you would slaughter the computer. I remember one time I played this game and I had it set on easy. I ended up beating the computer like 100 and something to nothing. Oh, man. 1982 was also the year that the Atari 5200 came out. So with improved graphics and sprites and a lot of other stuff, they decided to make the Real Sports series for the 5200. So here is Atari's Real Sports Football for the Atari 5200, programmed by Jim Huther. As you can see, the 5200 version focuses on realism, as you have the players in a huddle while you're picking the play, using the number pad on the 5200, which really comes in handy because that way you have access to more plays. And then the ball is snapped. Now you'll see when the guy catches the ball and he gets tackled, the camera moves down to the yard line where the ball is placed instead of just appearing like it does in the 2600 version. A real improvement, like a lot of the games on the 5200. I know that I say over and over again that the 5200 deserves a second look, and I say it again, and this game is proof of that. In 1988, the Atari 2600 kind of had a renaissance. And when that happened, Atari decided to create some new games for the Atari 2600. One of these was Super Football, programmed by Doug Neubauer. Okay, now, I made it quite clear in the last video that I did not like the Super Baseball game. Now, I have to say, though, in this instance, I really enjoyed Super Football. This viewpoint that you're looking at here was revolutionary. Nobody had really done this up to this point where you actually have an on-field view of the game. Pretty cool, I have to admit. Really enjoyed the game. The gameplay itself was pretty cool. I had a lot of fun playing the game. It has, of course, the same as the Real Sports. You have one player, two player, and you also have difficulty switches where you can make the game easy or more difficult. So again, this is Super Football from 1988. Okay, now it's time for today's trivia question. Now, many of you know that Madden has become a staple of the video game world here for many years. However, you might not know which year the game first came out. So that's today's trivia question. What was the first year of the very first Madden game? You think you know the answer? Well, you may be surprised when you find out, so wait till the end of the video. Okay, now for a slight departure from the Atari. The next game we're going to discuss came out by the company called Zor, and this game was NFL Challenge, released in 1988. Now this game was quite different than any of the other games discussed before. As this game, you were strictly the coach. You would pick the plays, and then your opponent would pick the plays, and based on how well the plays worked, as you can see, it shows just how like a coaching field would be, would determine how far you got on the field, or if the play worked, or if you got tackled, etc. Now, you had the choice in this game of choosing teams from the 1988 season, or the 1985 season, or you also had classic teams from the past. Really a lot of fun game. One that you really had to know the plays and what they did, or just hope you were lucky. So, I mean, as you can see, you had actual players from those teams from that time period. So a lot of fun, especially for those who take football seriously and know what the different plays are. And very different, you know. I mean, up until that point, most, like I said, football games had been what you had seen, you know, the typical on the field, and they didn't have team names. So this one was actually endorsed by the NFL. So not surprisingly, this game was only released for computers. It was available on MS-DOS and on Mac. So this again is NFL Challenge, and if you have DOSBox, you can play it yourself now. In 1988, Bob Whitehead, through Alcalade, made a game called 4th and Inches. You may remember that Bob Whitehead was the programmer for the original Atari football game. Okay, so here's a description of the game when we bought it. One of the earliest American football games to boast player animations, 4th and Inches is one of the first football games to offer a good blend of action and in-game strategies. You can throw the bomb, run the sweep, call the blitz, and exercise other common tactics in the game. The lack of detailed statistics and typically fast matches make this a good diversion for more realistic football games. The game's highlights are player substitutions, a good range of play selections, and fast action. The rare but superb Team Construction Disc add-on makes a game even better, being able to edit team names and colors, take the monotony of playing the same two teams away somewhat. Worth a look for football fans, and I could not have said it better myself. Really fun game. I think that a lot of people overlooked back in the day, but one I think that has stood the test of time. Of course, you know we couldn't talk about early football games without mentioning one of the greatest games of all time, that being Tecmo Bowl for the NES. Now, Tecmo Bowl had it all, didn't it? Oh yeah, it had those awesome NES sound effects that you had, the music, you had voice, you had realistic stats, you had season mode, you could do individual games, one or two players. I mean, this game had it all. Really, how many hours do you think we spent as kids playing this darn game? Oh, I can't even imagine. And I really have to thank my friend Keith Akers for introducing me to this game, because I mean, there were just so many hours I know that we killed playing this game when we could have been doing something else, but what the heck else was more fun than playing Tecmo Bowl? Really enjoyed this game a lot. I mean, it had all the aspects of the earlier games, but with that charm that only the NES could have. So, and if you'd like to see an extended play of this, watching me and Red play it, head over to our Facebook page, and you can watch us play nearly a whole game of Tecmo Bowl. 2 years later, in 1991, Tecmo released Tecmo Superbowl, which incorporated the 1990-91 NFL season. Of course, it wouldn't be a true sequel if there weren't some improvements, which there were, as you had better sound, better sprites, better graphics, more realism. And one thing I really liked is you had a heck of a lot more plays to choose from than you did in Tecmo Bowl. Not to put down Tecmo Bowl by any stretch of the imagination, but this was a big improvement. And I'll tell you what, we also had a lot of fun playing this game. Actually, which game did you prefer? Oh, to be honest with you, I like them both. I really can't choose one or the other. What I would do sometimes is I would play an entire season on Tecmo Bowl, and then afterwards, then I would jump in and start a season on this game. Oh, I did the same thing too, so really enjoyed the game. If you'd like to see an extended version of us playing this game, head over to our Facebook page and you'll get to see that as well. In our final game today, we have to list at least one homebrew, and this is Blip Football by David Galloway and Bob Montgomery. Now, you remember at the beginning we talked about those old handheld games? Well, guess what? They've made a handheld game of sorts for the Atari 2600, so you can relive those glory days of playing the Mattel football and electronic quarterback on your Atari 2600. And of course, you know where you can get this. Where's that? Oh, don't you know? Oh, of course I do. That is AtariAge.com. So head over there right now and get this game, Blip Football, in cartridge and plug it into your 2600 and relive those old memories of playing the handheld football games. Okay, and now the answer to today's trivia question. What was the year of the very first Madden football game? And the answer is 1988. The game was initially released for computer only on MS-DOS, Commodore 64, and Commodore 128, and Apple II. It wouldn't be until 1990, which is the game most people remember, that would be released on the Sega Genesis and the Super NES. So, are you excited about the big game on Sunday? I guess so. I'm not a big fan of either team, so to be honest with you, oh yeah. And how about the halftime show? I'll tell you what, I don't understand. Football is a rough and tough game, right? Right. So why do they always have such wussy pop bands as the halftime show? If it was up to me, it would be like Metallica or, Kiss. Kiss knows how to put on a good show. Oh, yeah, for sure. But I'll tell you what, this year I'm going to be watching the WWE Network. Oh, I am too. Halftime heat is going to be great. It's only going to be one match, but what a match. You're going to have Adam Cole teaming with Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, DIY version 2, going up against Ricochet, Aleister Black, and Velveteen Dream. It's going to be a heck of a match, and a heck of a lot better than Maroon 5. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Classic Gamer 74. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. In our next episode, we're going to discuss video games based on the Alien movie franchise. So you're not going to want to miss that. Oh, you sure won't. Well, until next time, this is Anthony, and I'm Red the Fox. Thank you for stopping by, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Until then, have yourselves a great day. Goodbye.